It's October 18th, which means that we only have about 23 days until NaNoWriMo. So I wanted to make a video talking about 5 mistakes that I've made with NaNoWriMo in the past. I've won NaNoWriMo 3 times. I have actively participated 4, but the years that I lost, I pretty much knew from the beginning that it wasn't the year for me, and so I stopped pretty quickly. I never made it to day 25 and gave up. I made it to day 3 and realized it wasn't the year for me, but I have won 3 years out of the however many I've been doing this. So I thought back to those years that I didn't participate or didn't win. I thought about the mistakes I made, and even in the years when I did win, I also made mistakes that made it more difficult for me to finish and feel really happy about it. So I narrowed down the list. I'm someone who's very self-critical, so it was easy for me to come up with a long list of mistakes I've made, but I think that's a good thing because I learn from my mistakes and I fix them in the future. And I think this is a really important exercise to do before you start on another project. Think about your last project, what you did well, what you didn't do well, and then make some changes. So the first mistake that I made is something that I talk about on my channel a lot, outlining. So I am not a big fan of outlining. I've been thinking a lot about outlining this year because I've over-outlined and kind of lost interest in a book, and I've also not outlined enough and it went in a direction that I wasn't expecting, and it was really difficult to deal with. And so I am trying a different approach this year for NaNoWriMo. I figured out that I was over outlining the plot and not doing enough work on the characters before starting the draft. And I think that if I were to focus a lot on the characters before starting and then let the story kind of evolve from wherever, it's gonna be a lot easier to edit, because the characters will remain the same, or they'll have the same style of talking and they'll look the same in the beginning as they do in the end. I know last year I had trouble making my main character likable, she was kind of annoying, and I realized it was because I hadn't figured her out in the beginning. I think that there were parts of her that needed to be annoying, but I think that what people were annoyed at when they read the book was she wasn't a full character in the beginning. I hadn't really fleshed her out yet. I think that this year, if I have really fleshed out characters, they can stay consistent throughout and I can have fun with the plot, which is really what I have fun with. So we're gonna try that. I'm not 100% sure if this will help the problem, but at least I know that it is a problem. I don't know. My mistake number 2 is losing focus of my purpose and my motivation behind writing. So I realized that I have been more successful writing about things that I'm really passionate about than writing about things I don't know a lot about, which seems really obvious. The first book I wrote for NaNoWriMo was a novel about a death that happened very close to me. I went into the book knowing what big issues I wanted to touch on and what I wanted my character to go through because I had witnessed it, I had gone through some of it, and it was something that was fresh on my mind and I felt like I needed to work through myself. But I feel like that's why I did well that year. The second year I won, again, the main character was similar to me. The story was something I took out of the news actually, but it was something that fascinated me and I wanted to find an answer for, so that was what drove that book. And then my story from last year was something that I felt very passionate about, just living where I'm living and the current political climate. So again, something very personal, something I feel very passionate about. Those were years where I was successful. I've been less successful writing about things that I don't know a lot about. For example, this wasn't for NaNoWriMo, but I outlined and started a story about a girl who opened her own food truck. And while it's completely feasible to write this story, I feel like you don't have to know a ton. I don't have to open my own food truck to be able to write a story about it. It's just not a passion of mine, and it's not something that I can really understand wanting to do for a long time. And so I gave up on that pretty quickly. I think you also have to remember why you want to write, because there are going to be times when it feels like it's too difficult, you're not good enough. Remembering those big motivations behind writing, remembering those big reasons why you're writing the book you're writing will keep you going. My third mistake that I made is also a really common one. I just compared myself and my progress to others. And this can be difficult because you have NaNoWriMo friends, you can see their progress, you watch YouTube videos and you can see their progress. And it's hard when you see someone doing so well and talking about how much they're enjoying the process and how inspired they feel and you're not feeling that way. It's definitely difficult to find happiness for the success of others when you yourself are struggling, but that is one of the most freeing experiences I've had, is just letting go of thinking about myself and being happy for others. I think you have to remember that there are plenty of books that are published every year. It's not like one person out of everyone writing NaNoWriMo is going to win and be published. That's not true. So you can be happy for other people while still working to be successful on your own. Of course, that's a work in progress. I'm always going to compare myself. I just have to make sure that I'm comparing myself fairly. I can't open up a book on my shelf and compare my first draft of my NaNoWriMo novel to their final draft, because there has been so much work put into that book that it's just not a fair comparison. My fourth mistake is letting my personal life interfere with my writing life. And this is another one that seems obvious, like if you want to write as a career, you need to write every day and you need to be able to kind of compartmentalize your life and not let your personal life bleed into things. But it's hard. I'm sure, as you know, it's difficult, especially if you're an emotional person, which as a writer you probably are. So I thought of one year in particular where this happened. It was kind of a rough year. I had broken up with my long-term boyfriend and I was dating again, and I started dating this person who he lived in a different town and he had a very strong personality. I was kind of like fascinated by him, and I just let myself focus on that versus writing. Even though he pushed me to write, he thought it was cool that I was writing, I focused all of my energies on that relationship instead of writing. And looking back, like, he's married now. I should have focused on writing. I would have had a novel come out of it versus a failed relationship, which, you know, that life experience is important, but in retrospect, I wish I would have written in addition to dating. My fifth mistake is not powering through that second week, even though I knew the struggle was coming. So for me, the second week is always the hardest. The first week is easy, you're excited, you're motivated, you can get a pretty good head start. I always get a good head start the first few days. And then the second week comes, and that's when it starts getting difficult. You're past the opening of your novel, the introduction, the exposition, and you are really getting into the story now. And for some reason, that always slows me down. And I know it's coming, I always feel it coming, yet I still get discouraged, even though I know it's gonna come. So my advice to you is get a good head start that first week and know that the second week is coming, prepare for it, carve out extra writing time, come up with some strategies for getting the words out, like word sprints, or I made a video on this last year, but you can do different things to reignite that flame inside of you. And NaNoWriMo has forums with great resources that can help you with this as well. So I got out one NaNoWriMo video before NaNoWriMo this year. Hopefully I'll get out a couple more before it actually starts. I do have a story idea. I do plan on talking about it. I'm just working it out now. Like, as of today, my narrator completely changed and I'm super excited. I just got inspired. I was out tutoring and I just, like, the inspiration came over me. I decided I wanted to focus on one particular perspective. I do this every year. I say I'm not gonna write in multiple points of view, and then I always end up doing it, but I'm gonna stick to it this year. I'm saying it now. I'm gonna stick to one perspective. But I hope that you guys are doing well with your NaNoWriMo prep. I am so excited for November to come. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a good day, and I will see you next time.